This Les Paul is one of the first Les Paul gold tops to get the humbucking pickups. This was made somewhere early to mid 1957, and they had not produced the cream-colored plastic for the surrounds on the humbuckers, so they used black, which they already had, and other black hardware. This is quite unusual with the black hardware. And the back of this guitar is a very, very dark finish, and in the common terms of today, this would be called a dark back. It's actually a very, very dark brown, and up close you can see the wood grain through the color. The serial number is applied in a more of a yellow ink because the normal black ink they would use would not hardly be visible. So it's a very clean example. Nice guitar, small frets, thinner than on the 59. Nice, comfortable neck, not very large. Another nice one. Gonna have to keep this one too.
Today, there's more investors that are involved, people that may love the instrument but aren't necessarily great players that appreciate the instrument, and a lot of them, or some of them, are interested in the collectability, the uniqueness, and others are interested in the value.
I do not think of these guitars as something to buy, to resell many years later for a profit. I have thought of them as merchandise through the years when I bought them and resold them. And depending on the circumstances, there were times when I would hold them longer and wait to sell them, not as an investment as normal, but as just a wise dealer's choice. But today the prices are different, the guitars are different, and many people do consider them as investments. And it's not something I would recommend to most people to invest in. Just like almost anything, it takes a lot of knowledge to understand the nuances of bursts and the burst prices. And it always makes sense to buy one when it is priced too cheap, and you know it. But to buy one at top dollar as an investment, speculating that I am doing this because in X amount of years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I want to sell it and make lots of money, it would not be my recommendation, not for that reason. And that's usually what I think of when I say investment.
We have a lot of clients that are successful musicians that are very young, and they appreciate the old guitars and they're buying old vintage guitars. Younger kids, I think, appreciate the fact that these guitars are vintage and that they want to be connected with those guitars. So I see the passion that we have being older guys and appreciating these guitars. I see the same thing in 15 to 18 to 22-year-old kids, and I see it carrying on. In fact, not only that, my theory is that rock and roll and electric guitars are very young. I was born in 1950 when the electric guitar came out, so in my lifetime, it's a new thing. I see in 25, 50, 100 years from now, the appreciation becoming even more intense of these guitars that were built in the 50s. And I think it's just growing, and people that want the best and want part of history, that's what they're going to always want. There's a lot of guitars that are made now that are made very well, and they're great guitars, but it's supply and demand. Everybody wants a 50s burst, and there's just so few out there.
With that said, if you look at Gibson and Fender, a great amount of what they're putting out there are reissues, relics of those instruments, that they can bring to the masses at an affordable price. Maybe someone can pay $250,000 for a Les Paul, but they can buy a '59 reissue for $3,000 or $4,000, or a '60 reissue Stratocaster for a couple of $1,000s. So there's definitely that fever for that type of guitar, even with the younger people.
I think traditional 50, when I say traditional, non-artist owned related guitars, I think were 3 or 4 years away from the $500,000 mark for genuine 58, 59, possibly 60 Gibson Les Pauls. I know we've already arrived at the $1 million mark for a guitar.
Certainly. Not the, I mean, I don't know that when or what it'll be or how the sale may be offered privately and sold privately and never reported, or the sale could be offered publicly even through such a service as an eBay or a Christie's or Sotheby's or, you know, a classy auction house, whatever. I'd say we run into celebrity guitars hitting those prices before we run into standard collectible guitars.
Obviously, that's kind of happened with the Eric Clapton auction and, you know, the sale of Blackie. It's just about hitting $1 million. And I think if you have the right artist and the right guitar, if you had Jimmy Page's Les Paul, you'd probably have $1 million burst. I don't think he'll be selling it anytime real soon, but
there is always speculation amongst the people who love bursts that Jimmy Page's #1, as he calls it, his #1 Sunburst Les Paul, would be worth $1 million if it went on the market. Maybe it would be, but that was because it was Jimmy Page's. If we take what would be considered one of the best, if not the best burst, like have a beauty contest and pick the best one, could it bring $1 million at some point? Probably, possibly very soon. The problem is those types of guitars rarely come on the market at all. And so we can speculate and dream about it, but when it will actually happen may be after a point. It may be there's a man ready today to spend $1 million for the right guitar, but nobody will sell him the right guitar. And 5 years from now, something will hit the $1 million mark. So when was the price of $1 million viable? When the man is ready to spend it, but he can't find it? Or when it is finally paid the first time? And there's so many ways, it's speculation.
If there's any guitar that's going to reach the $1 million point without a connection to a celebrity, in my opinion, it would be a Les Paul Flametop Sunburst from 58 to 60, because they're the most collectible now, the most expensive now. There was only 1,700 made approximately for all 3 years. Everybody wants a burst. Everybody that's a guitar collector or guitar player aspires to owning a burst at some point. So if it keeps increasing at the rate it's been increasing, I would say that's the guitar that'll hit the $1 million range quicker than any other guitar will.
For all I know, one is already sold for $1 million. I honestly have no hints that that has happened, but I know the way things are dealt and done, and if it was kept completely secret and then somebody told me the circumstances, I think it could be possible. I don't think it has happened, but it's just a number. It's a magic number in some respects.